Okay, let me just see if you're on the list. Hello?
Wait, what? That doesn't happen. You can't.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory. Don't trust them.
Exactly. Yes.
Move it and its facial features seem to match our hooded character. So he's
Why is his name Whitney Elizabeth Houston? Whitney Houston? Hey everyone, it's your friend Thinknoodles, and welcome back to Think Reacts, where today we're reacting to the brand new game theory video about That's Not My Neighbor, where we are supposedly the real monster in the game. I don't see how. We're protecting people. How could we be a monster other than being kind of rude to people who want to get home?
Okay, let me just see if you're on the list.
Oh, yeah. You gotta...
Hello?
Wait, what? That doesn't happen. You can't. Imagine you have that jump scare.
Welcome to Game Theory, the show that can
I
get
like
you
the
onto
art.
any list so long as you hit that subscribe button. What's up
am.
with my
That's
face?
that's how I knew
I'm
about
just trying
You're a
something new.
doppelganger.
Yeah, gotta keep
No.
things fresh. All I have
No.
to do now
Click the
is,
thing. Where's the DDD?
Who are you? I'm Tom, the host of Game Theory. Right, and I suppose you also have
Let's
a
call your
crippling
roommate.
Reese's addiction. Exactly. Ha! Trick question. I'm an M&M guy. Get him out of here, boys.
Wait,
Sorry
you don't like
about that.
Reese's?
These doppelgangers are getting pretty out of control. They've been taking over my YouTube feed for weeks. Who knows how many YouTubers they're impersonating at this point?
I
And it's
had
all
not
because
seen
of the
case
indie horror sensation that is
Thumbnail,
That's
dude.
Not My Neighbor. Very
Oh, that
heavily
is-
inspired by Papers, Please. That's Not My
Ooh, I've
Neighbor is a
never-
game about checking
I've never
paperwork
played
to keep
Papers,
intruders
Please.
out. But instead of working for a totalitarian government, you're working as a simple apartment doorman, trying to keep these horrible
Simple?
monstrosities from
This is
getting in
hard,
and
this
murdering
game.
everyone
I haven't even
inside.
really
These
beat it
creatures
yet.
are known as doppelgangers, or
Yeah.
just doppels for short, and they can take the form of anyone, though they can't seem to get everything right. Sometimes the mistake is as subtle as a wrong ID number. Other times it's more obvious. Luckily,
Yeah.
you're not helpless against these monsters. You have the Department of Doppelganger
Yes,
Detection,
the triple
or the
D.
DDD, to help you out. If you suspect anyone of being a doppel, you can shut the doors, sound the alarms, and they'll be right by to
Yeah,
clean up
just
the
like
mess.
Monsters,
It's a
Inc.
simple premise, and the character designs are fun and memorable for both the humans and the doppelgangers, which means it should come as no surprise to you that ever since this game came out, we've been receiving non-stop requests to cover it. By the way, if you have any suggestions for games to cover, please do let us know over on the Game Theorist subreddit. I'm constantly checking it to find what kind of topics you guys are interested in. But the point is, this game has been on my radar for a hot minute, and with the recent release of its new Nightmare mode, I think
yeah,
it's the
where
perfect time
everyone
for us
is
to
like a
dive little
demon.
deeper into this game and figure out what's really going on in the neighborhood. Where do the doppelgangers come from? What is the DDD hiding? And why, oh why, is Afton in this game? Seriously,
that's
I don't
right.
think
I had him.
From
He was like the
Grab your
first
hazmat suits,
doppelganger, or
theorists,
first
because it's time for us
visit
to
from
find
anyone.
the law hiding
But-
in the hallowed halls of That's Not My Neighbor.
You're gonna
Let's
answer
start
all
with
those
the things that
questions
the game
in one
straight
video?
up tells us. Besides
All
the
right.
whole doppelganger thing, we're told
Yeah.
that this game takes place on February 9th, 1955, thanks to a calendar that you find above your desk. And that's basically all we're told. You see why it took me so long to make this video? However, even with just the date, we can start to figure out
that's New
context
York.
of what's going on in the world outside of our little apartment complex. I couldn't find anything specific that happened in history on February 9th of that year, other than the fact it's a Wednesday, which I call out because
That's
the
not
game
historic.
seems to suggest that it's either a Monday or a Tuesday, depending on the type of calendar you think this is. But minor details aside, the big picture here is that 1955 was the height of the second
communist
Red Scare, the second wave of political propaganda about the risk of communism infiltrating the United States. This was especially true in 1955 because just 1 year earlier, the Soviet Union State Security Agency, otherwise known as the KGB, was formed, and espionage was a big part of their remit. That's one of the reasons why travel restrictions were instituted throughout various parts of the US to Soviet nationals from as early as, you guessed it, 1955.
Wait, really? I mean, admittedly, I don't know as much American history as I should, but I didn't know that we had areas and municipalities closed or open to travel by certain Soviet citizens. Really? So wait, this area is closed to travel. Why? Like, why in these areas? What's specific about these areas that they didn't want citizens of the Soviet Union? I mean, North and South Dakota, like, well, no offense. I guarantee you somebody watching this lives in South Dakota. But, like, those are very, like sparsely populated states, especially in 1955. I mean, really, all there was in those states, again, I don't know my U.S. history that well, was probably, at least in South Dakota, was farms, right? Oh. And for whatever reason, like another sparsely populated state, the most sparsely populated state in the U.S., Wyoming, they can go anywhere. I could see why they wouldn't be allowed in certain cities, maybe, but yeah, some of these places, I mean, isn't there like a huge mountain range right here? Like, okay, whatever, I don't know.
1955. If you provided enough ID and paperwork to prove you were a US citizen, you'd be allowed to enter with no issue. However, if you were a Soviet, no dice. Sounds familiar, right? So, am I just saying that this is more Cold War-style propaganda and that the Doppels are just Soviet spies that are here to ruin our way of life? No, of course not. What I am saying is that
I was gonna say, wow.
Parallels between the two, and so we can take a look at some other parts of Cold War history to help build a better picture of what's going on here. For example, the latest update for the game is known as Nightmare Mode, and in it, we are essentially living through a nightmare-like version of the game. All our usual neighbors are replaced with monsters and otherworldly beings. However, from the opening cutscene, we can see that there is more to this than just having a nightmare. It tells us that the DDD know exactly what these nightmares are, and that we should go and see a psychologist because they are trained to help us deal with them. But we're never told how these sessions are supposed to help, and this is where
it's
our
therapy,
Cold War
man.
history comes into play. This scenario is identical to a technique that was used during the Cold War for soldiers who were traumatized by World War II. Military psychiatrists found that if they induced sleep using specific drugs in traumatized soldiers, they could either get them to essentially sleep off the trauma by putting them into a deep continuous sleep and then they'd wake up calm and restored, or they could induce what they called twilight sleep. Specifically, by using drugs like sodium amytal or sodium pentothal, the soldiers would get
truth
sleepy,
serum?
and
Sodium
as they
pentothal?
did, they'd begin to speak openly about their trauma. This gave the therapists insight into what happened to them and allowed those therapists to then push the patients into reliving that trauma as if it were happening right now, which would lead to a cathartic release of repressed emotions and allow the patient to move on from their trauma and readjust to civilian life. That is what I believe is happening in these sessions. We aren't just having nightmares because of trauma. We are actually being forced to relive the trauma by the DDD in order that we can be freed from it and go back to work as normal the next day. Or at least that's what the DDD wants us to think the result will be. See, while they claim it's to help us like these real-world methods, the nightmares don't end. They just go on and on.
Yeah, can you beat
That's
nightmare
not
mode?
Just
Is
a
it
game
possible?
Mechanic either. In the initial tape, it tells us that Henry approves of this method despite the nightmares not ending, which is the opposite of what these sessions are supposed to do. Or is it? While most of these real experiments were used with the intent to heal soldiers by getting them to relive past events, if the soldiers didn't remember the event exactly, the therapist would take some creative liberties. They'd give them a made-up scenario in order to draw out
Tyrannosaurus
a
Rex
emotional response. This turned out to be just as effective at healing repressed trauma, but it did mean that these soldiers would start to remember these new fake scenarios as if they were the real source of trauma.
Wait, what? So they would introduce these memories like under hypnosis to these soldiers who had already been traumatized, and then they say, hey, actually, you know what happened when you were over there? You got chased by a T-Rex and you almost died, and then they're gonna remember forever that they were chased by a T-Rex. Everyone is going to think they are crazy. How does this help people?
Basically, while trying to heal people, they accidentally figured out how to brainwash someone.
Yes!
And of course, the CIA took notice and began using this method within their own operations.
Well done.
Now, everything about the
All in the
DDD
name of
screams
science.
government agency, from the logo to their instructions to the fact that they look like they're these guys straight out of Monsters, Inc.
Yes, they do.
So, if they are encouraging these employees to go and use their psychologists, then I have a feeling they're not actually going to be cured, but to be brainwashed. In Nightmare Mode, our neighbors are all replaced by monsters. We've got vampires, eldritch horrors, and you.
Yes, I love it.
But here's the thing. In reality, our neighbors aren't monsters. They're just people. It's the Doppels that are the monsters. And yet, in this mode, everyone appears to be a monster. That doesn't seem like we're reliving trauma that we've seen, but instead, a fabricated reality where our perception is being twisted.
So they're just like normal people, but we think that
everyone is a monster. We are more likely to press the big red button on our neighbors because we see everyone.
We don't trust them.
And we aren't willing to risk it. But that's not what the DDD wants, right? They want to catch the doppelgangers, not your neighbors. At the beginning of the game, Henry gets called out for not being excellent at his job despite surviving. To survive, he can't let any of the doppels into the building, but to not be excellent, you also have to detain
let the normal
neighbors
people
as
in.
well as the doppels. Why would they shame him for that if they want the neighbors detained? I must just be paranoid, right? Ooh, look over here. Tom's on another one of his characters are lying to us trends. But honestly, it is games like this that are the reason I have trust issues. Because look at what happens when you finish the game. You get given your scores, which at first seem pretty normal, but notice the specific wording. Doppels captured and neighbors killed. Two different things are happening.
Well,
is that on a suspected doppel? Despite being told they're evil and scary, if we call them on a doppel, they're captured. But if they're actually human, they aren't released. They aren't sent back home. They're killed off. It actually reminds me.
Wait, is that what that meant? I didn't know that. I thought it meant the people that were killed were the people that I let home because I let a doppelganger in. I didn't realize that sending... I completely misread that. Sending a neighbor to the DDD, they kill them. Oh, he could be right. These are evil people.
Another piece of 1950s media, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, a sci-fi horror film that originally came out in 1956 and was based on a book that came out in 1954, perfectly straddling our main date there. The premise is that an alien species arrives in these seed-like pods that hatch and take on the identity of an already existing person. They will then go on to kill this person while they're sleeping in order to replace them. In some later adaptations, it's even revealed that high-ranking officials like police and members of the government have been replaced by these pod people, now able to push their own agenda of replacing the entire population. That seems to me like the DDD. They aren't actually trying to get rid of the doppels. They're trying to remove the humans that the doppels are impersonating in order that they can more easily enter society. That's why they convince us that all of our neighbors are monsters within those therapy sessions. If they have a paranoid, desensitized doorman that basically sends everyone to the DDD, it allows them to more easily get their hands on the original neighbors and kill them? While the doppels take their place. All disguised as an act of protection. But it's not just the doppelganger element that appears to be the same as the body snatchers. It's also the aliens. Yeah, just when you thought this thing couldn't get any more conspiratorial. When you boot up Nightmare mode, right at the start, we get a single frame of a DDD agent standing next to an alien.
I didn't see that.
I'm not kidding. And this
come on, wait a minute. I didn't see that. So you said a single frame, so it's probably in the animation, and knowing game theory, they take little tiny things and go through it frame by frame. And I'm waiting for them to undo all those codes and stuff that we saw when we played Nightmare mode last time. And there's a lot in those, and they probably found more than I did. But yeah, that is DDD with an alien. You can't refute that. That is true.
Even part of our nightmare. This is part of the instructional tape that's gone out to inform us about the psychology
that's actual footage.
Then are officially involved in this whole thing, and they are working with
not
the
in
DDD
our minds. They are
to
there.
help the doppels take over. Fortunately, we're not the only ones that are suspicious.
I want to see behind those
masks.
Overlords.
There is someone else who's trying to help us survive everything we're going through and uncover the truth about what's going on.
This guy has codes.
During Nightmare mode, we encounter this guy wearing a hood, and he gives us a very interesting note.
I got this guy. Yeah,
trust
exactly.
With the DDD logo crossed out.
That's right.
And a website. This guy also appears to be the one who warns us about the nightmare clown that wants to kill us. He's wearing a mask in the base game, but if you go into the game's files, you can remove it, and his facial features seem to match our hooded character.
What?
So he's clearly got our best interests at heart. Plus,
so wait, I actually never saw this guy in the base game, like before the nightmare mode.
Wants to kill us. He's wearing a mask.
That
in the
is
base
crazy.
Game,
they literally took it apart in the game files. And found, look, I mean, look at that too, the nose and mouth. It's like perfect.
To match our hooded character. So he's clearly got our best interests at heart. Plus, I love a good puzzle, so I'm willing to hear him out. We go to the website and oh no, this might be a little more
like
than
ChatGPT screwed this up so bad.
5 letters here: OITNW, and we somehow have to convert that.
Well, it was a cipher. It wasn't a Caesar cipher.
Alphabet, but into usable words and sentences.
I thought it was a Caesar cipher.
When in doubt, I know there is always one place that I can turn to in times of need: Reddit. And sure enough, over on the
That's how I found it too.
Redditor Decoding.
That is literally how I found it. Yes, that was the one I saw.
A set of equations. The first one was
I
I
didn't
plus
know they
t
were
equals n,
equations.
then
I just took what he
equals
said.
W. And so, going through each one like that, they figured out that I was 1, T was 2, N was 3, W was 4, and O was 5. If we convert that initial line of code into their corresponding numbers, we end up with this, which they also realized divided perfectly into groups of 3. Sadly, that's where their trail ran cold. But while they weren't sure what
they had it on Reddit.
Another Reddit user known as Digital Dino came into
I saw this guy's too. Okay.
That this is what is known as a base 5 number system. Basically a system of numbers that only uses 5 digits, 0 to 4. The number system we typically use is known as base 10 because all of our numbers consist of 10 digits, 0 to 9. Now, you'll notice that base 5 doesn't use the number 5, which shows up a lot in this code. So what Digital Dino did was swap it out for the 5th digit of base 5, 0. It feels like messy math and kind of flies in the face of that initial cipher, but when you look at the letters again, you can see there is a method there because they each use a set number of straight lines. I uses 1, T uses 2, N uses 3, W uses 4, and O 0. Uses 0. While I may not be super satisfied with the logical step there, I can't deny the results. Once Digital Dino made that change, they converted each set of 3 numbers from base 5 to base 10. You do this by multiplying the first number by 25, the second by 5, and the third by 1. Then adding them all together. That means that each group of 3 numbers becomes one number in our traditional number system. And wouldn't you know it, all the new numbers we get fall between 1 and 26, which means they all can correspond with a letter of the alphabet.
Oh my
Once you
goodness.
convert the entire page of code,
yes,
you end up
which
with
we know,
this
we got
confidential
this.
material, Trojan Horse Project, funded by the military department of the government.
So actually, now that I think about it, I saw the post on Reddit and I was having a hard time following it, obviously. And then I went over to That's Not My Neighbor wiki and they had this. That's where I found this, like just spelled straight out because I was like, I can't convert all this. Anyway, yeah.
General Director Oswald D. Kepler. Lead researcher Dr. Afton. Year of creation 1945.
I like how they made that
Prominent
pink.
results from some experimental models. Verbal communication perfectly replicable regardless of language. Acceptable falsification.
They're just talking about
determination to deceive.
the creation
Physical
of the
assimilation
doppelgangers.
still to be improved. Capacity to act under orders still nil. New project proposal. Evolutionary algorithm project. Massive training of experimental models. Leak detected. Emergency protocol activated. Contingency plan. Foundation of the Doppelganger Detection Department. Current state of the project.
So,
active. Promising project
I
results.
think what they're saying is they created the doppelgangers.
The character named Afton is involved here. But the more important details are that the doppelganger operation wasn't meant to just be an invasion of the Body Snatchers 2.0. It was originally designed as a military operation. The project is called Trojan Horse, and in Greek mythology, the Trojan Horse was a gift given by the Greeks to the Trojans after the Greeks had been totally destroyed in battle. The Trojans saw it as an act of surrender, and they took the new trophy into the city, only for a few Greeks to have stowed away inside the horse. And that night, they snuck out of the horse, opened the gates to the Greek army, who then destroyed the entire city.
I don't know why I said yay. It wasn't really yay.
Military was going to use these doppelgangers in the same way, to infiltrate enemy lines and help them win the Cold War. And while the use of a weird alien monster thing might be a bit out there, this type of espionage where someone is disguised as someone else certainly isn't. During and after World War II, Britain's secret operations executive would employ plastic surgeons to do operations on the faces of their operatives so that they would be unrecognizable and blend in with the people around them in whatever part of the world they were going to be stationed in. Apparently, it was so successful that the American government would send their spies to Britain to get the same surgeries. This was all revealed by a man called James Hutchison in, get this, 1945. The same year the Trojan Horse Project started in That's Not My Neighbor. Naturally, permanently disfiguring someone and having them give up their lives isn't the sort of thing that goes down great in the court of public opinion. So what if the government tried something else? Instead of trying to turn people into other people, why not create something that has the ability to mimic others, falsify documents, and then enter a country undetected?
Wait, hold on.
Where I believe the aliens come in. Because
wait a minute. Just real quick, dude. Looking at his passport here, I don't know why he's born in 1963 because in 1955 and the expiration dates, but why is his name Whitney Elizabeth Houston? Whitney Houston? Seriously? I don't know what Okay.
Because
I
in
don't know why they went with that.
1945, there was also reports of an avocado-shaped UFO crashing into trees.
An avocado-shaped
Mexico, just
UFO?
5 weeks after the first atomic
avocado?
bomb was detonated there. Apparently, the ship was taken away by U.S. military.
That's an
buses,
egg!
Which would mean that
That's
they
not
suddenly had
avocado.
access to all that alien tech, and maybe even an actual alien species that they could use as part of their new initiative for military espionage. However,
What would they need an
clearly
alien
this
for?
idea didn't work in the long run. While things initially seemed good, this new life form wasn't really doing the whole taking orders thing. Some of them even managed to escape,
went on
leading to
strike.
the creation of the DDD to try and detain
them
them
back.
so that they could continue their experiments.
And we're
But as we
helping
saw
them.
From the frame in the psychology video, it looks like the DDD has been compromised. They're working alongside the aliens body snatcher style, now eliminating the humans you detain and releasing the captured doppels back into the world.
But we would
to take the
notice.
place of
Look at
another
them. Look at
unsuspecting
her.
human. Until one day, everyone, including you, is replaced by one of them. Maybe one day we'll get to peek behind their visors. And when we
Yes.
do, I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see a distorted version of our own face staring right
No,
back
you gotta
at
take
us.
the mask
But
off in the
that's
files.
just a theory. A game theory.
Dang!
Thanks
All
for
right.
watching.
Oh, hey, I like that they linked doors at the end. Let's go.